The forgotten chambers awaken. The cold emptiness of space stretched out like a blanket of silence, broken only by the hum of the distant stars. For thousands of years, the Terran station Omega had remained hidden, its location forgotten by all but a few. It was a relic, abandoned by humanity when the galaxy had become too dangerous. Once a symbol of Earth's power, it had now turned into a tomb of forgotten history. But today, something stirred in the cold silence of the station. A galactic patrol ship, a sleek vessel from the Solvan Empire, drifted quietly through the dark. Captain Drell, a seasoned officer of the Solvan fleet, stood at the helm, staring at the data on his screen. He had heard rumors about a lost human station, but this was something different. The ship's sensors had picked up strange energy readings, unusual for a station so old. "Captain, there's something wrong here," reported Ensign Kale, the youngest officer on board. She was staring at the monitor, her fingers tapping nervously. "These readings, they're too strong for a station that's been abandoned for centuries." Drell frowned and turned to face his officer. "What do you mean, too strong?" "I can't explain it, sir. It's like the station is alive." Captain Drell narrowed his eyes. The Solvan Empire ruled the galaxy with an iron fist, and they had conquered every race they had encountered. Yet the thought of a long-lost human station, buried in space, sending out strange signals was something even the mighty Solvans did not expect. They had crushed Earth's colonies and erased their history. Humanity was long gone, or so they had believed. "Set course for the station," Drell ordered, his voice firm. He felt the excitement of discovery stir within him, but something deeper, a sense of caution, tingled in the back of his mind. It wasn't fear, but something darker, something that told him this discovery might be more than just ancient ruins. The ship adjusted its course, slowly drifting toward the station, which appeared as nothing more than a shadow against the blackness of space. As they approached, the once dormant station's lights flickered on, as if it had awoken from a long slumber. The eerie glow of the station's broken windows reflected a sickly yellow-green color, casting long shadows across the ship's hull. It almost seemed like a warning. "We're approaching docking range," said Kale, her voice filled with hesitation. "Prepare the boarding team," Drell ordered, trying to keep his nerves under control. "Everyone stay alert. Something doesn't feel right here." The docking bay opened, and Captain Drell led his team into the darkness of the station. The moment they stepped off the ship, a cold chill swept through the air, making their skin crawl. The station was old, covered in dust and debris, but there was something more, a sense that it had been waiting for them. As they walked deeper into the heart of the station, they came across walls lined with ancient human symbols, forgotten languages, and battle scars that told the story of humanity's fight for survival. Some of the soldiers stared at the walls in awe, others in confusion. Humans had vanished long ago, and now these walls seemed like a strange, silent message from the past. "Captain, look at this," Kel's voice interrupted his thoughts. She was standing in front of a large, cracked cryo chamber, the glass broken and shattered. But what stood out were the faint glowing lines still running along the edges, indicating that the chamber had been active not too long ago. Drell approached the chamber, his pulse quickening. This station was meant to house humanity's most powerful soldiers, frozen in time to preserve their strength for a war that never came. One of the soldiers on his team, a young Solvan named Ivik, examined the chamber and frowned. "There are more of these chambers scattered across the station, Captain. Hundreds of them. Some still active." "Still active," Drell echoed, his voice hardening. "Why are they still powered up after so long?" Before anyone could respond, a loud clanking noise echoed from deep within the station. The sound was unnatural. The unmistakable noise of something moving, waking up. The team froze, and Drell's eyes narrowed. "What was that?" Ensign Kale whispered. Drell raised his hand, signaling for silence. The noise grew louder, and the air grew colder. From the shadows of the station, the sound of heavy footsteps could be heard. It was impossible. This station was abandoned. Yet now it seemed as if someone, was coming towards them. A figure appeared from the darkness, its body cloaked in tattered human armor. The helmet gleamed under the dim light, reflecting a faint silver shine. The figure was moving with the precision of a soldier, methodical and deadly. Drell's heart raced. He had seen many things in his life, but this was different. The figure wasn't just any soldier. This was a human, one of the old Terran warriors that had been put to sleep in these cryopods. Without warning, the soldier's eyes snapped open, glowing a cold blue. It was alive. The human warrior, long preserved in cryo-sleep, had awakened. Intruders. The voice was deep, almost mechanical, as it echoed through the empty halls. Leave this place, or face the consequences. Drell felt a chill run down his spine. These soldiers were not just some long-forgotten relics. They were dangerous. They were warriors. And the nightmare they had feared for so long had just begun. "Captain," Kale yelled, "there are more of them coming." The soldier stepped forward, raising a bladed weapon in his hand, the weapon crackling with energy. "You should not have disturbed us," the soldier said. His voice was hauntingly calm, as though he had not just been awakened from centuries of sleep. It was as if he had been waiting for this moment all along. The walls around them seemed to shake, and the once silent station began to hum with activity. More pods opened, more soldiers stirred from their long slumber. The warriors from humanity's forgotten past were waking, and they were ready for war. And in that moment, Drell knew the truth. The galaxy's nightmare had just begun. Captain Drell took a step back, gripping his weapon tightly. His team stood frozen as the human warrior before them moved with precision, scanning them with glowing blue eyes. More distant metallic clanks echoed through the station as additional cryopods hissed open, their icy mist spilling onto the floor. "Captain," Ensign Kale whispered urgently, "we need to leave. Now." Drell's instincts screamed at him to agree, but something inside him hesitated. The Salvan Empire had crushed humanity centuries ago, wiping out their colonies, their fleets, their homeworld. The humans were supposed to be extinct. And yet, here they stood, alive, armed, awake. The first awakened soldier took another step forward. His armor was scared, battle-worn, and heavy, unlike the sleek designs of modern combat suits. A glowing energy blade extended from his gauntlet, its edge crackling with an ancient power long forgotten by the galaxy. "You have trespassed on sacred ground," the human said, his voice cold and calm, as if he had expected this moment for centuries. "Identify yourselves." Drell forced himself to speak. "I am Captain Drell of the Salvan Empire. We believe this station was abandoned. We meant no harm." The human tilted his head slightly. "Salvan Empire." His voice held no emotion, yet something dark flickered behind his glowing eyes. Drell hesitated. "Yes, the Salvan Empire rules the galaxy now. Humanity has been gone for a long time." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then the soldier laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Gone," he repeated, almost amused. "No, we have been waiting." A loud hiss filled the room as more cryopods slid open, revealing rows of warriors, each one stepping forward with the same deadly precision. Hundreds of them. Drell's stomach twisted. This wasn't just a few survivors. This was an army. The lead warrior turned slightly as another figure approached. A woman, her armor lighter but no less formidable. Her gaze was sharp, her movements fluid like a predator surveying its prey. "Commander Voss," the first warrior acknowledged her. She studied the Salvans with piercing eyes. "So, they finally came." Drell stepped forward cautiously. "We didn't come looking for a fight," he tried to explain, but his own words felt empty. Voss smirked. "You should have." Without warning, the lights in the station flickered, and the walls hummed to life. Power surged through ancient systems, long-dormant weapons beginning to wake. The humans weren't just waking up themselves. They were reawakening their station. Kale gasped, pointing to her scanner. "Captain, our ship, it's losing control of its systems." Drell's communicator crackled, and his pilot's panicked voice came through. "Sir, something is overriding our ship. Weapons, shields, everything is shutting down." The human commander took a step closer, eyes locked onto Drell. "Your empire thought it erased us. It buried us in history, destroyed our worlds. But while the galaxy moved on, we prepared. We have been waiting for the day you returned. And now it begins." A deep rumbling vibration shook the station as massive doors at the far end of the chamber slowly began to open, revealing something hidden in the darkness. Drell turned toward the growing shadows, his heart pounding. And then he saw it. A warship, not just any warship, a human warship, preserved in this forgotten station for centuries. It was massive, its hull still marked with the insignia of the Terran Defense Force. Unlike the sleek, polished ships of the modern era, this one was brutal, angular, and built for destruction. Drell had seen the records of old human war machines, but this was something else. The human commander turned back to him. "You came here looking for ghosts. But now, the ghosts have returned." The ancient engines of the warship roared to life, and Drell realized, too late, what was about to happen. Humanity was back, and the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Drell's breath caught in his throat as the ancient human warship rumbled to life. The station's walls shook, lights flickered, and an ominous hum filled the air. His crew's scanners beeped wildly, energy readings off the charts, far beyond what modern Solvan warships could generate. "Captain," Hel's voice trembled as she stared at her datapad. "The power signatures, they're unlike anything we've seen before. This ship isn't just operational, it's adapting." Drell forced himself to move, gripping his rifle tightly. Across the chamber, the human warriors stood unshaken, their glowing blue eyes reflecting the flickering light of the awakened warship. The lead soldier, Commander Voss, watched the ship with a quiet intensity. "She's still asleep," she murmured. A second soldier, his armor heavier and adorned with old battle scars, nodded. "But she knows. She remembers what was done to us." Drell took a cautious step forward. "That ship," he started, keeping his voice steady. "It's ancient. It shouldn't still function." Voss turned to him, a smirk playing on her lips. "Do you really think we would let time erase us?" A deep groaning sound echoed from the warship's hull as massive external plates shifted, revealing hidden weapon bays. Drell recognized the formations: railguns, plasma cannons, missile silos. But what scared him the most was the central cannon emerging from the ship's underbelly, a weapon so massive it could erase entire fleets. "This is impossible," one of Drell's officers whispered. "That thing is thousands of years old." Kale swallowed hard. "Sir, I don't think it needs to be new." Voss finally turned her full attention back to Drell. "Your empire destroyed our colonies, hunted us to extinction. But before we fell, we prepared. We built weapons meant to survive time itself, ships that could sleep, just as we did. And now, you woke us up." The ground rumbled violently, and Drell's communicator crackled to life. His ship's pilot screamed through the transmission. "Captain, the station is locking onto us. Our systems are frozen. We can't move." Drell turned back to Voss, desperation creeping into his voice. "We didn't come here looking for war." She tilted her head. "Then why does your empire rule through it?" Before Drell could answer, a thunderous boom shook the entire station. The warship's engines roared to life, ancient thrusters igniting, sending shockwaves through the docking bay. Red emergency lights flashed across the walls as the ship began to rise, breaking free from its centuries-old restraints. Drell's crew staggered back, their eyes filled with terror and awe. This wasn't just an old relic, it was a beast waking from its slumber. Kale checked her scanner again, her face pale. "Sir, the ship is self-repairing. It's adapting to modern systems. If it fully awakens, we don't stand a chance." Voss nodded approvingly at her ship. She knows. She remembers the war. Drell took a shaky breath. This was no longer an exploration mission. This was a disaster. And the worst part, it was only the beginning. The warship lurched forward, its ancient thrusters shaking off the dust of centuries. Sparks of blue energy danced across its hull, its power core surging back to life. The entire station trembled as if the ship's mere presence disrupted the fabric of space itself. Drell's heart pounded as he watched from the control platform. His officers stood frozen, their eyes wide with fear. Kel's voice was barely a whisper. "Sir, the ship is scanning everything. Us, the station, the entire system." Voss, the human commander, smirked. "She's learning." Drell forced himself to stay calm. He needed to take control of the situation before it was too late. He turned to Voss. "You said your people built this ship to survive, but what does it want now?" Voss' eyes burned with something dangerous. Retribution. Before Drell could react, a hollow metallic voice echoed through the docking bay. It came from the warship itself. "Hostile presence DTT." A deep, bone-rattling hum filled the air. The ship's weapon systems powered up, turrets emerging from its hull like the limbs of a sleeping giant waking to war. Drell's communicator buzzed, his ship's pilot screaming in panic. "Captain, that thing just hacked our systems. We're locked out. Our engines are dead." Kel's hands trembled as she read the scanner data. "Sir, our weapons are offline. Our shields just shut down. It's like the ship is rewriting the station's entire code." Voss glanced at her second-in-command, who merely nodded. "Told you," the soldier muttered. The warship shuddered violently, and suddenly, the bay doors above began to peel open, revealing the black void of space. Drell's stomach sank. "It's leaving," he realized. Kale shook her head. "No, it's preparing for war." Outside the station, Salvan warships floated in formation. The fleet had arrived expecting an easy victory, a salvage mission, maybe a minor skirmish. But now, they were staring at an ancient human war machine, something built for total destruction. Drell's communicator buzzed again. "This is Admiral Zoreth of the Salvan Empire. Captain Drell, report immediately. What is happening on that station?" Drell hesitated. What could he even say? That the Empire had unwittingly reawakened a force beyond their control. That they had poked a sleeping beast. The warship's engines flared as it rose from the station, its massive cannons shifting into place. Then the ship spoke again. "D as I Ion. REVNANT. Mission: complete eradication of hostile threats." Voss grinned. "Oh, this is going to be fun." Drell barely had time to brace himself before the first shot was fired. A blinding beam of energy erupted from the warship's main cannon, cutting through the void of space like a burning spear. It struck the nearest Salvan warship, a battleship twice the size of any human vessel, and ripped it apart instantly. No explosion, no fiery wreckage, just a flash of light, and then nothing. The Salvan fleet, once confident in its dominance, suddenly found itself paralyzed with fear. Drell could only stare in horror. "That was a battleship," he whispered. One shot just erased it." Kel's fingers trembled over her datapad. "Sir, the warship, the Revenant, it's adapting in real time. It's learning our fleet formations, scanning our frequencies, rewriting its own combat protocols." She looked up, her face pale. "It's becoming more dangerous every second." On the station's deck, Voss and her soldiers stood unfazed. The human commander watched with a quiet satisfaction, her gaze locked onto the destruction unfolding above. "Your people called us extinct," she said. "They thought they won. But humanity was never truly gone. We were just waiting." The Salvan fleet finally broke from their shock. Hundreds of ships moved into attack formations, their weapons locking onto the Revenant. Plasma cannons fired, missile volleys streaked across space, energy beams cut through the void, all aiming for the lone human warship. But the Revenant did not move. The attacks never hit. Before Drell could even process what was happening, the warship's defense systems activated. A barrier of shimmering energy erupted around it, absorbing and redirecting every single attack. One of the deflected plasma blasts shot back toward the Solvan fleet, tearing through 3 of their own cruisers. The Revenant had turned their own weapons against them. "Sir," Kale gasped, her voice shaking. "The ship, it's learning how to counter everything we throw at it. We can't win this fight." Drell slammed his fist against the railing. This wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. The Solvan Admiral's voice came through the communicator again, but now it was filled with panic. "Captain Drell, we need a retreat order. That thing is unstoppable." Drell took a deep breath. He had to think. Fast. Voss watched him with a knowing smirk. "You're starting to understand, aren't you?" she said. "This isn't just about revenge." Drell turned to her, desperate. "Then what is it about? What do you want?" Voss's expression darkened. "We want justice. Your empire hunted us, killed us, erased our existence from history. But we survived. And now we're going to show the galaxy what happens when humanity is pushed too far." The Revenant's main cannon began charging again, its energy core pulsing with devastating power. The Solvan fleet was out of options. And Drell knew this was only the beginning. The Revenant hovered in the void, its hull glowing with ancient energy. It was no longer just a ship. It was a force of nature, something beyond the Solvan Empire's understanding. It had survived centuries, waiting in silence, and now it had awakened with a single purpose: destruction. The Solvan fleet was in chaos. Battleships scrambled to reposition, their commanders barking desperate orders. But it was useless. The Revenant's main cannon reached full charge. The ship's deep mechanical voice echoed through the Solvan communication channels. "Priority 3 identified. Executing TONTRMEASURES." A massive pulse of blue light erupted from the ship's core. The energy wave expanded outward at an impossible speed, crashing into the Solvan fleet like a tsunami. The moment it touched the enemy warships, their systems shut down instantly. Engines flickered and died. Shields collapsed. Weapons powered off. Drell watched in horror from the station's control deck. His fleet, the might of the Solvan Empire, had just been neutralized without a single human casualty. "How?" Kale whispered, unable to comprehend. "It disabled everything. Our fleet is defenseless." Voss stepped forward, her gaze cold. "We built the Revenant as a last resort, a weapon that could learn, adapt, and disable any threat. You thought humanity was gone, but we prepared for this day." Drell clenched his fists. "Then why haven't you killed us already? If this is revenge, then finish it." Voss looked at him with something worse than hatred: disappointment. "Killing you would be too easy," she said. "Your empire didn't just try to erase us. You erased history. You made sure no one remembered what humanity was truly capable of." She gestured toward the battlefield. "Now they'll remember." Drell turned to the Solvan fleet, hundreds of warships, helpless, unable to fight back, and the Revenant, preparing for its next move. Then it fired again. But this time, it wasn't a weapon. A deep, vibrating shockwave spread across the fleet. At first, nothing happened. But then, one by one, the disabled ships exploded from the inside. The shockwave had activated their own warheads, turning their massive arsenals against them. Drell could only watch as his fleet tore itself apart. Battleships shattered into debris. Cruisers were engulfed in fire. The darkness of space was filled with the dying screams of Solvan warriors. Kale gasped. "It's not just killing them. It's making sure there's nothing left." Voss crossed her arms, watching without expression. "No one will ever forget this day." Drell's breath came in shallow gasps. His empire had ruled the galaxy for centuries, believing itself invincible. But now, all of that power meant nothing. The Revenant turned its weapons toward the Solvan homeworld. And Drell realized this war was far from over. It was just beginning. The Revenant loomed over the Solvan homeworld like a dark omen. The once mighty empire, feared across the galaxy, was now helpless before the ancient wrath of humanity. Fires still raged in orbit, where the shattered remains of the Solvan fleet drifted like ghosts of their former glory. The last remnants of their once great power were nothing but debris and silence. On the planet's surface, sirens screamed. Cities descended into panic. The ruling elites of the Solvan Empire, who had once mocked the idea of humanity's return, now scrambled for evacuation ships, desperate to flee their own world. Inside the Solvan command station, Drell stood frozen, staring at the incoming destruction. His hands trembled. His heart pounded. "We have to surrender," Kale said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's over." But Drell knew surrender meant nothing now. Humanity wasn't here for prisoners. They weren't here for diplomacy. They were here to finish what had begun centuries ago. The Revenant's deep voice echoed across every communication channel in the system. "Xalva and Empire, judgment is upon you." On the planet's surface, the sky darkened. The Revenant's cannons charged with an eerie glow, ready to unleash destruction unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Not just war, not just battle, extermination. Drell's breath caught in his throat. He had spent his life believing in the supremacy of the Solvan Empire. He had believed in its rule, its power. And now, all of that was crumbling. "Voss," he said, turning toward the human commander, "you're going to wipe out an entire species. This is genocide." Voss stepped closer, her eyes dark with centuries of rage. "Your empire did the same to us. You erased humanity. You burned our cities. You hunted our people like animals. And now, you expect mercy." Drell's throat tightened. He had no words, no argument. Voss looked to her officers. "Prepare the final strike." The Revenant's cannons reached full charge. Then, something unexpected happened. A new signal appeared on the scanners. At first, it was weak, barely a whisper in the sea of transmissions. Then it grew stronger. A message. From the surface. Kel's hands flew over the controls. "Sir, we're receiving a direct transmission from the Solvan High Chancellor. He's begging for mercy." Drell swallowed hard. The High Chancellor, the ruler of the Empire, was pleading for their survival. On the screen, the old Solvan leader appeared, his face filled with terror. "Humans," he stammered. We surrender. Please, have mercy. If you destroy us, you become the same monsters we once were." Voss's expression didn't change. She stared at the transmission, her fingers hovering over the final command. For a long moment, no one spoke. The galaxy held its breath. Then, slowly, Voss lowered her hand. She turned toward the Revenant's crew. "Stand down," she ordered. Drell's eyes widened. "What?" Voss exhaled. "We've already won. The Empire is finished. The galaxy will never forget what happened here. We don't need to become the monsters they feared." The Revenant's weapons powered down. The deadly glow faded. The judgment that had hung over the Solvan homeworld like a death sentence was lifted. Drell collapsed into his chair, barely able to believe what he had just witnessed. The Revenant turned, leaving the broken empire behind. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors, but as a warning. And the galaxy would never forget.